How much solar do you really need to live comfortably and cruise on your boat? Even if you analyze the draw of all your equipment and appliances, you may still be missing some important information. Hi, I'm Carolyn Sherlock, and on this episode of the Boat Galley Podcast, learn some of the factors that you must consider when deciding how much solar you'll need. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Pantry in Paradise. As cruisers, we've all experienced LOB, or lost on board. You know you have something, like that can of mushroom soup, but you just can't find it. Enter Pantry in Paradise, your go-to app for galley management. Pantry in Paradise tracks your provisions, where they're stored, and creates your next shopping list. Provision for guests, or even extra weeks. Find Pantry in Paradise in the App Store and on Google Play. Over the years, I've frequently seen links on Facebook to various articles on determining how much solar power you need for your boat. And after reading a number of these, I kind of feel compelled to chime in with my own 2 cents. And, as is often the case, my views are a little different from some of the other experts. Basically, I think all the info about how to compute your electrical demand and calculate how much watts of solar will meet that demand are great as a starting point. I just don't think that they are the ending point. I think that neither calculation can be made with any degree of precision in general, and the estimates are even more likely to be wrong if you haven't yet cruised for more than a week or 2 at a time, or only in a different locale than your long-term cruising plans will take you to. Let's look first at the demand side. Typically, these various articles tell you to do an energy audit. They say to list every single electrical appliance on your boat, figure out how much each one runs per day, look up how much each draws when it's on, and calculate the total usage in terms of amp hours. That's great, in theory. But it's virtually impossible to know in advance what you'll use and how many hours each day. It's particularly hard to know before you've cruised in a particular area, and even experienced cruisers have a hard time knowing exactly what their usage is. There can be considerable variation from one day to the next in general. And if you cruise to a warmer climate, the refrigerator and fans will run far more than you expect. There's both the temperature difference and, for the refrigerator, you'll be drinking far more cold drinks over the course of the day. And every warm drink that has to be chilled increases the load on the refrigerator. Seasonal variations will occur also. It's not unusual for the refrigerator to run twice as much, or even more, when full-time cruising in warm climates than it did on weekends in cool climates. Now, if you have a 12-volt water maker, you'll probably make considerably more water than you expect when it's hot, both for drinking and for showers. Now, friends may stop by to chat, and you end up with more lights on and maybe some music, too. Oops, that wasn't in the energy budget. And how can you estimate an average amount for extra lights to work on an emergency repair? Taking photos, posting to a blog or Facebook, or even just checking on weather can add quite a bit, as cameras, computers, tablets, and cell phones all have to be charged. And if you're using an inverter to convert DC to AC power, you can check the AC draw of the appliance, but it's hard to know just how much will be lost in the conversion. It's often in the 10 to 20% range, again meaning you'll be using more DC power than you estimated, unless, of course, you include the conversion loss in your estimate. And if you're sailing with the motor off, you'll use way more power than at anchor due to the instruments, autopilot, radar, and anything else, in addition to your what I'll call normal stuff. We've often found that what the manufacturer calls an average draw for an appliance, the cycles, say such as a refrigerator, often just doesn't match what happens in real life. They may say it runs 20% of the time, But their assumption is that the door isn't opening, you're not putting anything warm in, and the temperature is 70 degrees. So they may call it an average draw of 2 amps, or 48 amp hours a day. Then you're getting into it a dozen or more times a day, putting warm drinks in, and the temperature outside is 90 degrees plus. Suddenly it's running 50% of the time and is actually drawing 120 amp hours a day. That's a difference of 72 amp hours between the numbers you used for your energy budget and what your actual need is. Now, these numbers are for illustration purposes only. They may not reflect your real refrigeration usage. But for us, in very hot weather, we've had a refrigerator run for 56 minutes out of every hour. And in cool spells, it may only run 10 minutes an hour. That's how big of a difference there can be. Now let's talk a little bit about the solar output side. How much a given wattage of solar panels will actually put out on a given day, or even on average, is equally uncertain. Was it cloudy, sunny? Did the boat lie so that there were shadows on the panels for part of the day? How many hours of usable sun are there where you are? How clean are your panels? And if you're sailing, your sails are likely to shade one or more of your panels too. Again, you can make some general estimates, but realize that they are only estimates. And yes, the brand, technology of the panels, and the charge controller will play a role in the actual production. Okay, the bottom line. Until you start cruising in your intended cruising grounds with your setup, it's impossible to know if you've got adequate solar or not. Take us, for example. We put a 345-watt high-voltage solar panel with a Kidd by Midnight Solar MPPT controller on the boat a while back. At the time, it was more than adequate for our needs, even with a 12-volt water maker. We were fully topped up by 11 a.m. or noon most days. But we had a propane refrigerator, which we changed to a 12-volt model. Our demand went up. How much did it go up? Well, we can't say exactly, and it varies from day to day. So the question remained, did we have enough solar or not? Well, initially we did. We were fine. We were topping up by 2 or 3 every afternoon. But then, when we went to the Bahamas, we decided to get an Engel freezer. Well, with that addition, we suddenly went from being fully charged basically every day to only occasionally getting fully charged. We are having to run the generator some. Now, we'd love to add another solar panel. It's on the list of projects. And hopefully, maybe we'll do that. If you don't already have one, a battery monitor is invaluable for telling you if your batteries are being sufficiently charged and how much power you do have. I've put a link to the battery monitor that I recommend in the show notes. And another thing to remember, I have never met anyone who said they'd put too much solar on their boat. Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley Podcast. We appreciate your support and hope you'll leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast player.